Yep, we're at YouTube and we're going to watch a Frank Zubek elusive cube video. 3 synergetics might equal nothing. Pretty strong words. Let's find out what they mean.
Hello to you all. Modeling with blocks is dissection dependent. Simply, one dissection can be clever, the other inferior. There is an old saying, less is more. Well, in synergetic, all these truths are reversed. When in synergetics, more is less, and there is no sign.
All right. More is less, less is more. The actual phrase is doing more with less, but that doesn't impede Frank at all. Let's just find out what else he has to say.
Obeying by that rule. In synergetics, a quadriregular tetrahedron equals 6 A modules. And no matter how many A modules one has, nothing but absolutely nothing can be built.
Nothing but absolutely nothing can be built. This is the beginning of where Frank takes a really hard turn into the abyss. First of all, 6 of the pretty shoddily rendered module there in white, that is a module, let's say. There's supposed to be a left and right-handed one. That would make that quarter of a tetrahedron that's in black. Notice the chipped modules. What a bargain. You get these little things that chip up and turn to crap. But nonetheless, he's trying to say that A modules and their counterparts B modules, both of the same volume, cannot possibly make anything. What he's not showing is that he shrunk his volumes of his modules to 1/8 of the original volume by cutting them in half in size to size them to the same, so to speak, as A and B modules. What he's not letting you know is that the A and B modules build everything he does. Every single thing he does is made from A and B modules. So he's saying something that's actually completely wrong. He says they don't make anything. They make everything that you are going to watch, but he had only one defense. He was going to make his smaller.
Other than a regular tetrahedron from which this block was derived in the first place. So this is nothing unique, rather just self-evident. In a Z modeling, a quadriregular tetrahedron equals 4 modules. Just like this.
Okay, he's got 3 of his solid kites and 1 of his octanes. The octane is 6A and 6B. The solid kites are 10A and 2B each. They always equal 12 A and B modules. The third one, his double corner, is made up of actually 4 mites, and that's 8 A's and 4 B's. We shall see later.
And a whole hierarchy can be built if having enough blocks. Isn't this unique and clever?
Wow, isn't that an ego about to pop and splatter the room?
Now, this is clever in this aspect too. By folding these together, we already see the cleverness that we already built in a partial cube just from a quadriregular tetrahedron. Of course, we need more of these to finish the cube, and that block, this block, is existent, of course, in a quadriregular tetrahedron here. So that's very clever.
It's kind of like clever times clever times clever, or clever to the 3rd power, or clever cubed. Clever cubed by Zubek.
Any polyhedra builder clearly can see the cleverness in one structuring and inferiority of the other structuring. Having more yet do less is the synergetics way.
which is untrue, and he constantly says that the Zubek way is better than the synergetics way. He will not let you know that every single one of his modules is made of the A and B modules, which he completely tries his best to destroy and have them not exist. It's actually really quite simple, the resolution to all this, but he maintains and persists in trying to just destroy synergetics so it doesn't exist, so his system means something more, I guess.
Having less, yet do way more is the Zubek's way, as we're trying to clarify the same fact with the mind or any synergetics model. We clearly see that in the case of the mind, the synergetics again using 3 modules per mind instead of only 2. Now splitting the mind into 2 is very clever because it forms a half square base pyramid, also known as a half irregular octahedron.
So what Zubik has done here is he's shrunk his units down so they're 1/8 the volume. So he shows a mite, and that would actually be made of 8 mites. Did I say that wrong? Yeah, no, I didn't say it wrong. But he would have 8. He would have 2 of his double corners, each made of 4 mites, and then there would be 8 of them, and that would compose the larger mite. You don't see that because he's drawn with felt tip larger A and B modules because he's made his shapes 1/8 the size they should be.
Which is a very important block. We can build, for example, a hexagonal column. See, this is a square base pyramid, half octahedron, and this is a bit 1/3 of the hexagonal column, which I already demonstrated in other videos.
A lot of this stuff is been published and been written up numerous times. It's actually fairly ancient knowledge.
This hexagonal column, it's a space filler. Never conceived by synergy enthusiasts, yet this is a very important structure.
That's kind of an interesting statement, that he's telling you that we never, as a group, there's a group of people that nobody ever envisioned something, which is a horribly inaccurate thing to say, and how could he possibly know? Just 'cause there's a lot of things that people, and nobody is going to know everything. But what you really got here is just agglomerations of A and B modules. He's got more handy chunks. They're clunky chunks, but they can make things. We understand that. Some people kind of dive into the depth of it and try to find the most basic units. Other people make all kinds of stuff and say, look how pretty it is. You know, I'm such a pretty man. I built these pretty things. You know, there's all types. But not every one person is going to be able to cover all the ground out there.
For space filling. Now 3 mites equals a cube volume. Now we have 3 mites in here. We have 3 mites in here, 9 modules all total. But when 3 mites equals 3, 1 completely becomes inferior because it would need 24 modules like these mites to build a cube. Now 24 is very far from the lowest common denominator, and this particular mite is same in synergetics as in Z system. We need 48 of these to build a rhombic dodecahedron, and we need 24 of these to build this cube, this exact cube. But it's far from the lowest common denominator. There are similar errors throughout the whole concentric hierarchy. One might say, but when mite equals 3, it cannot be modeled into a cube, that it is irrelevant. So people saying in synergy, well, if you have these three mites, you cannot build a cube, which is true. But we also cannot build a cube with this claim. Synergetics claim this regular.
Wait a minute, okay. I stopped this because he pulled out this little tetrahedron. If you remember in the beginning of the video, he had a larger tetrahedron, 24A modules, built that tetrahedron. Here he comes out with a tetrahedron that is 1/8 the volume, and it's got an edge half the size of the larger tetrahedron. This unit then in his fingertips is one of his modules. This is something that he requires for his system to work. That larger tetrahedron could just as easily be this tetrahedron in his hands, but he doesn't allow that because everything he's doing is at a half the edge size or 1/8 scale of synergetics, and it's not necessary. So his unit in his fingertips could have been easily shown to be made of 24A modules and fit into that cube that he's got over there, and he could have easily shown how all of his units are made of A and B modules, but instead he magnifies or reduces the size of his, or magnifies the synergetics ones modules so they are incompatible. And what he's going to show here is that 3 mites, which is total of 6A and 3B modules, or 9 modules, can't make this cube. But he can by cutting them in half. But this cube is 1/8 of the synergetics cube. These mites that he's using are 8 times too big, and he knows it. We've told him this numerous times.
The tetrahedron is 1/3 of the cube. True, but it cannot be modeled either. So, if this is valid and accepted, then this has to be valid and accepted also. It cannot build a cube, but it has a cube volume equivalent, which I will show in a second. Now, a cube equals 6 can be modeled, and it is the lowest common denominator using the minimum volume identical blocks. Now that is here. We have a cube here, Zubek's cube, not synergetics cube.
Zubek's cube is 1/8 the volume of the synergetics cube. 1/8. That's why he can actually even demonstrate this. What he's not showing is that his modules are made, every single one is made of A and B modules if you allow for the scale. Now, why wouldn't you at least show that it's possible and then try to argue that your units should be 1/8? He refuses to acknowledge that A and B modules could be building up his forms. He refuses that, and it's a common thread through whatever he does. And in fact, it's probably why he hates synergetics. He brings up synergetics. It's really, without synergetics, there's nothing new that he's done. Nothing. It's all old.
And we're going to see it has all volume identical blocks. And I want to highlight something. We have mite in here. As we see, we split it in half, and in this case I show left and right hand cooperation to build a cube, but I also demonstrated the same structure while I using a same oriented mites and still can build the same cube. So for synergetics to claim that I need left and right is actually not true. It's irrelevant. And besides that, synergetics also need left and right for their mites to actually cooperate. Not only that, but 2 mites between one mite and the other mite, there is a difference because these 2 mites are left and right. 2 mites, even the mites themselves are neutral, but by the virtue of this dissection, these indeed come in left and right hand order.
That is something that Zubek wouldn't have known if we hadn't told him, and he uses it, and it really has no consequence, but it's a way to emphasize something. If you orient those A and B modules, 24 of those mites, in a synergetics cube, those mites don't move. They have those, the mites don't move, nor do the A and B modules that are defining them. Every one of Zubek's units can be outlined or traced by those modules within that